Hey, in this video, we're answering another question from the community. The question is, what tools, techniques, or exercises do you use to coach clients with approval issues? We'll dissect that here.
If you're coaching humans, you're coaching people who need approval. Virtually everybody. But I'm going to make a distinction here between wanting approval, liking approval, and needing approval. And the most important piece about needing approval is whether people need approval in order to take action. That's the distinction. We could all say that we all need approval for certain things, but is the need for approval stopping somebody from taking action? In other words, I want to build a business. I want to ask somebody out on a date. I want to start speaking. I want to share my message with the world. I want to write a book. But I'm not doing all that stuff because I need approval first, or I need approval throughout the process. That's the main thing that we're looking for as coaches, because if we are trying to find people who don't need approval or trying to turn humans into animals that don't want or like approval, that's never going to happen. And as I was thinking about this morning, I think it's really helpful to understand, the human development, the human behavior evolution in topics like this. I believe when we are young, we don't need approval the way I just defined it. We don't need approval. I mean, obviously, especially when we're really young and we are literally, our survival is dependent on everybody else around us. Of course, we need all kinds of things from other people, but I don't think we need approval in order to do the things that we're trying to do at that age, right? And I'm talking about like when we're 6 months old, when we're a year old, we're 2 years old, starts getting a little bit foggier because then we're assessing our parents' approval and other people's approval, and we are starting to let that determine what we're doing as kids. But when we're really young, we don't need approval in order for us to take action, like to learn, right? We don't need approval necessarily to learn how to walk. Now, feedback is really important, and the way that humans around us give us feedback is going to be important, but that's not where I want to go with this conversation. What I want to say is when we're really young, we don't need approval, and then we do. And I think this is really important to understand, because when we're coaching people, anytime we have a situation where we weren't always this way, then what we're trying to do as coaches is help people get back to the place before the problem existed. So if there's like almost all of our limiting beliefs, I think all of our limiting beliefs operate this way. There's a time we didn't believe the thing that's shutting us down now. So how can we as coaches help facilitate somebody to get back to that time? And that's really critical. It'll help you as a coach because you're not trying to introduce anything new. You're not trying to put anything on somebody. You're actually trying to remove the things that are holding them back from what was already there. And self-esteem is at the core of the need for approval. And self-esteem operates this way, right? So I don't believe that we needed approval at one point the way we need it now. But then we learn to really, really want it to the point where if we didn't get approval from other people, it did shut us down. And then most people, and I think during our schooling years, anywhere between the ages of probably 6 and 18 or 20, our self-esteem goes through so much turbulence during that time that it is really difficult for any human child to survive childhood with a super high level of self-esteem and not needing other people's approval. That's really, really rare. So we all pretty much follow a similar trajectory in childhood, and then we all come out of it. Now, of course, our details are different. I'm not trying to be dismissive or try to compare anything like that, but most of us come out of our childhood, and then we just wrestle with, the scars, the emotional scars, and traumas and memories and all of that that were created as we were developing, right? And sometimes they were really deep in our early childhood years, 3, 4, 5. Sometimes they were a little bit later. Maybe we got bullied in school, in middle school, or maybe some of the stuff really started to get some momentum in high school. But for the most part, we've got this period where our self-esteem takes such a beating. And because our self-esteem takes a beating, then what we try to do, this is how we adapt as humans, then the brain says, I don't want to take that hit anymore, emotional hit or physical hit or anything that's related to, us being punished in any way. I don't want that to happen anymore. So the way that I can try to avoid not being punished or embarrassed is to always fit in, is to not rock the boat. Don't be different. Don't stand out. Don't do anything that offends people. Don't do anything that other people don't like. Because if I can make sure that I don't make anybody not like me, then they won't hurt me, right? That's some version of the process. Like, we all go through some version of that process, I think. The intensity level can be different, again, so please, I'm not trying to paint everybody with the same brush, but at a very, very high level, I think we've all come through our childhood with some form of that solution, right? If I can do what people want me to do, then I won't suffer the consequences. That's pretty much it. And that's approval, right? So if you approve of the way I look, if you approve of the way I do my hair, if you approve of the way I talk, if you approve of my skills, right? And this goes from our parents to other members of our family, to our friends, to our teachers, any leaders, we're generally seeking approval from them, right? But then over the course of time, we know years and years and years and years of that get all kinds of these layers and covers placed on us, and we're creating alter egos and we're creating identities. We're just doing the best we can to not get in trouble and the best we can to feel good and to feel comfortable. And the best way that we can do that is just be approved of everybody else, right? Because disapproval is one of the worst things that we can feel, right? And I think that starts with our parents. If we feel like they're disappointed in us, then, that's just an emotional, destruction for most of us, right? So we don't want to do that. So our solution is, let's try to get approval from everybody, because if they like us, then they won't hurt us and they won't leave us, right? We're always trying to avoid abandonment as well. By the way, I am answering this question. I'm just answering it from a very, very high level, because we have to understand the full concept before looking at some more of the details. So again, the question is, what do we do with people who have approval issues, constantly seeking approval from someone? So most of us have this pattern of, if you approve of me, you won't leave me, you won't hurt me. And then all of our decisions are based on getting other people's approval. When that gets cemented, or when there's enough evidence or there's enough intensity of emotion attached to everything that I'm just talking about here, then people can get to the point where they need approval in order to take action. And if they don't have approval, or they don't think that they're going to get approval from somebody, then that fear is big enough for them to not go after their goals, for them to not go after their dreams, for them to not go for what they want, for them to actually suppress their own desires, because they're so afraid of not being approved of by other people, right? So this is like a spectrum. Not everybody gets to the same intensity level, but pretty much everybody is on some area of this spectrum, because it's just a human behavior pattern. And this is what we as a coach need to understand. It's not like some people need approval and some people don't. It's just, where are they on the approval spectrum? And we're constantly trying to assess where they are, so that we can obviously meet them where they are and help them with whatever it is they need. So going back to this idea of approval, we all like approval. We all want approval. But we can get to the point where we don't need approval to take action on our goals and dreams and desires. That's the distinction, right? So please, the reason I think all this is so critical to understand, as a coach, if you're trying to help people get to the point where they don't like or want approval from other people, just stop it. It's not going to happen. We're human animals and we desire social safety. Approval is part of that. You're never going to get rid of the element of the human that desires social safety unless that human literally turns into a sociopath, right? Or a psychopath, where they're so disengaged from the human desire for social safety that like none of this stuff matters, right? So, but that's, fortunately that's a relatively small, part of the population. So we're not talking about those extremes. We're talking about people that are trying to get to the place where they don't want to like approval, or they don't want approval. We hear a lot of rally cries like zero fucks given, and it just doesn't matter what people think of me. No. Don't try to get to that point for yourself. Don't try to get other people to that point, because that's not important, nor is it possible for a healthy mind to not like or want approval. However, you're never going to get to the point where you don't really care what other people think, but you can get to the point where you've got these people who think one way about you, and then those people who think another way about you. And you just prioritize the people, one of those two groups. You just prioritize the people and decide, I care more about what those people think. I still don't like the fact that certain people don't like me, or certain people even hate me, but I'm going to prioritize the people that do like me, or the people that do need me, more than these people over here. And that's such a critical piece, because what most people are trying to do is just focus all the energy on, the haters or the people that won't approve of you, and try to squash this, right? Like, I'm not gonna go out there and get visible until I can completely dissolve my desire for these people to like me. Don't do that. Just increase your desire for other people to like you, or increase your commitment to other things and other people, so that it overpowers this. Don't worry about trying to dissolve this. Just overpower it with something bigger. And that's absolutely possible for everybody. And I think it's going to be so much easier for you to maneuver in your life. And then as a coach, this is what you want other people to do as well. This is what you want to help facilitate in other people. So don't try to dissolve their desire to be liked. Just get them committed to another group of people who do like them. And then they just have a decision. Like, we all have a decision every day. Are you going to be more committed to your comfort, or more committed to your growth? Are you going to be more committed to your quote unquote haters? I don't like that term, haters. It's kind of a cool, it sounds great on memes. And there's a lot of energy behind it. I don't love it, but I'll use it just for the sake of common language. But are you going to be more committed to the haters? Or are you going to be more committed to to your seekers, to the people that actually do want whatever it is that you are, wanting to share, right? So I say all of that in a high level context, so that we understand what's actually happening when it comes to approval, right? And then as a coach, what you're doing is you're constantly listening to clues in people's language, body language, actions, where it seems to you like the approval that they're seeking is not in alignment with the life they want to live. I mean, it's just as simple as that, right? You're seeking something that's not helping you go where you want to go. And when you hear people talking about other people's opinions, talking about judgment, talking about the fear of feedback, talking about wanting to do something, but then right before they did it, they thought, uh-oh, what are people going to think? Or what if they don't like it? Or what is my mom going to say? Or what are they going to think? Any of those kinds of clues lets you know, as the coach, we've got approval issues that sounds like it's getting in the way, right? Of, again, taking action on goals and dreams and desires. So that's what we're listening for. And then we just got to dive in. So is there a single concept? Absolutely not. There's not a single exercise. It's really just dissecting. I was thinking that, a lot of these, a lot of questions that people have in the coaching world are very specific, and there's nothing wrong with these questions, right? Like, what do you do when somebody is this? Or what do you do when someone, has trauma? Or what do you do if somebody's coming out of divorce? Or what do you do if somebody needs to lose weight? Or what do you do with limiting beliefs, right? And I get it. And I totally understand the questions, and I appreciate the questions. And the reality is, it's like driving your car up to an auto mechanic and saying, my car won't start. The mechanic isn't just going to go, oh, okay, here's what I'm going to do. The mechanic needs to know why the car won't start. But the presenting symptom is the car won't start. And so what we do as coaches is we see the presenting symptom. We see that people can't lose weight. That's a symptom. We see that people are afraid of speaking. That's a symptom. We see what's on the surface. Symptoms are on the surface, right? Systems are below the surface. If you ever want to be masterful at anything, you have to understand systems. So a good car mechanic is going to go, well, what happens when you turn the key or when you push the button? What happens? Does it make a sound? Because if it doesn't make any sound, well then, okay, I think I know what question I need to ask next. Or does it make a sound and try to start but doesn't quite get it? All right, great. They might ask, does it have gas in the car, right? Like some of the basic things the masterful mechanic will ask because they understand engines. And they don't just work on symptoms. Whereas most coaches are essentially asking, what do I do if somebody's engine won't start? What do I do if somebody's car won't start? And the mechanic goes, I don't know. I have 5 questions to ask before I even come up with an idea. And most humans hate that because we don't want to have to ask questions. We want to have a ready-made solution. And that's one of the biggest issues. So my advice to you is don't, and this is to everybody, not just the person that asks this question, don't look for a ready-made solution for approval issues. Understand the human behavior and then how approval fits in and where approval shows up. Because here's the reality. Approval is a driving force for all of us all the time, everywhere, in every scenario. Approval is a driving human force all the time, everywhere, in every scenario. There's at least a desire and a liking of approval. Whether there's a need for approval, according to the way I explained it earlier, we don't know. We got to see. But approval is everywhere. Every time you talk to somebody about anything, approval's in there. There's something in there. So I want you to get to the point where you understand the bigger conversation as much as possible so you can listen to certain cues and go, what about that? What about that? What about that? Now, the reality is underneath approval is self-esteem. So approval is what we're looking for, but the reason we're looking in the first place, especially if we're needing the approval, is because there's a lack of self-esteem. If all of us had a full tank of self-esteem, and self-esteem being defined as how much value we believe we have as humans, if we had a full tank of self-esteem and failure didn't take anything away from our value as a person, and other people's feedback didn't take anything away, and all the other expectations that are missed didn't take anything away from our value as a person, if that full tank was so rock solid that nothing could pull from it, then that is a scenario where we really, truly wouldn't care all that much about other people's approval. We would still want it and like it, just not that much, because our tank is already full. The lower we are on our self-esteem, the more we try to fill that gap with other people's approval. So I'm not 100% convinced that I'm valuable as a person. Will you confirm that for me? Will you affirm that for me? What can I do so that you let me know that in actuality, I'm okay as a person? That's really what's going on underneath the surface of approval, which is underneath the surface of all the symptoms, right? It's a self-esteem issue. Now, self-esteem is what I said earlier. It's a scenario where all of us at one point in time had no self-esteem issues. And then we learned them. We learned that other people's approval, other people's feedback, other people's judgments, other people's opinions are things that we should care about enough so that it affects how we think about ourselves. That's all learned. That is not an innate human element, I don't believe. It's learned. And here's the beautiful thing. Anything learned can be unlearned. So if once upon a time we learned this, then we as coaches can try to help get people back to before we learned it. Because when we learn that our value as a person is dependent on other people's approval of us, from that point forward, we're at a place of compensation. We're trying to compensate for that void. We're trying to compensate for that lack of self-esteem, right? So really what we're trying to do is just get people back to the place where they're not trying to overcompensate anymore. They're not trying to overcompensate for the lack of self-esteem that once upon a time they didn't have. Here's what I think about self-esteem. I want you to imagine like being right in front of a big elephant, right in front of a big elephant. Like literally you can touch the elephant. And if you're a full-grown adult elephant, if you're right in front of the elephant, it's going to be taller than you. It's going to be really wide. You're not even going to be able to see the sides of the elephant without turning your head probably both ways, right? And when you're right in front of the elephant looks massive. Now I want you to imagine that elephant being 200 yards away from you. What's your experience of the elephant now? Your experience of the elephant, whereas once upon a time when it was right next to you, you needed to look way over here to see the butt, way over here to see the trunk, way up there to see the top, way down there to see the bottom. 200 yards away, you just have to go like this. You see the whole elephant with little minute shifts, right, of your eyes because perspective, because distance. The elephant hasn't changed. You haven't changed. But the distance between you and the elephant has changed, so your experience of the elephant has changed. What I want you all to realize is your self-esteem hasn't changed, but there's distance between you and it. So if you have self-esteem issues, you've just got distance between you and your full tank. But the full tank way over there looks like just a little drop. And then we constantly try to fill in the gaps between where we are and the full tank because our experience of the full tank is now restricted. But the tank is still full. And the reason that we have distance is what I just explained a moment ago, is that we start creating alter egos, we start creating identities, we start creating behavior patterns because we're doing everything that we can to not be disapproved of, to not be abandoned, all that stuff, right? What that does is it just continually creates distance between who we were and who we are. And I'm just talking about, our experience of ourselves, of the planet, of, relationships, all that stuff, right? So it's like the part of us just stops. And as we continue to grow, we just keep going. So there's the distance. And this is the distance between your current you and the full tank, the full-grown elephant 200 yards away from you. And as you continue to grow, the distance just continues to increase. So I think you have to understand that concept as a coach if you want to help people just close the gap. That's really all we're trying to do, is we're just helping people close the gap. And because of that, you also have to understand it's not going to be a quick fix. You're not just going to, there's no, what is the thing? Like you can't just teleport yourself, right? All the way back to right in front of the elephant again. You can't do that. At least I haven't found a way to do that, but you can close the distance. And the good news is the distance can be closed in way shorter period of time than it took to create the distance, right? But there isn't a quick fix. And because it's not a quick fix, there isn't one thing to do. There isn't one exercise. There isn't one concept because we're dealing with a lot of distance here. So on one coaching call, you might do, if you're going to follow NLP, you might do a timeline therapy process with somebody, but that's one call. And that could close the distance a little bit, but then there's just going to be more distance still. And then on the next call, you might do something else. Like we teach something called Cartesian coordinates. And it's really about how do we make decisions, and approval is a part of all that stuff. And then that might close the distance a little bit more. And then on your third call, which might not even be 3 calls in a row, this third call might be 4 months later. On your third call, when you address the self-esteem distance, you might use something totally different. You might have them write a letter to themselves or to the person that bullied them or to their parents. And then that could close the distance a little bit more. So I never want you to even search for the one thing. Don't ever search for the one thing unless you're talking about such deep concepts and fundamental principles that you're trying to understand the simplicity of the systems. If you're understanding the simplicity of the systems, great. But then how we get there, there's a million different answers because every human is different. And so I want you as a coach to study human behavior so that you understand how the engine of the mind operates, so that you can ask the same questions that a mechanic would ask if you take your car in, so that they can assess what's actually going on, so that they know, do we need to put this car on jacks? Or can I just open the hood and fix it from above? Or do I need to get into the car? And do we need to mess with some of the wires? Like, where the solution even comes from in that analogy differs depending on what the actual issue is. Sometimes the engine needs to be removed from the car. Depends. It all depends. So the angle at which you approach something depends on so many different variables. And I want you as a coach to expand your capacity to understand it all. And when you expand your capacity to understand it all, then here's the beautiful part. Then it actually does get quite simple because you understand the bigness of it. My experience is that usually takes a year to 2 to 3 years of deep dive experiential learning in order for people to really fully comprehend the essence of human behavior. It takes a while. I'm not going to lie to you. There's a lot of people that will lie to you and tell you that you're going to be able to just memorize a few techniques and all of a sudden people are going to pay you high ticket for what you have to teach them. Bullshit. Bullshit. At least not in deep dive work, right? If you're expecting to understand the processes at a deep level of human behavior over a weekend or in just a couple months, my advice to you is don't pretend to be committed to be a coach, because you're not committed to be a coach unless you're willing to do what it takes to learn what you need to learn to increase the capacity of understanding so that when people come to you, you got them. And there's just way too much flattening of the human experience in the coaching world where people think that there's just a few things you can memorize and then all of a sudden you go out and change people's lives. You just can't do that. And if you're committed to that, this isn't for you. This industry isn't for you. Deep dive coaching isn't for you. This teacher and trainer definitely isn't for you. But the mind will always want those shortcuts also, right? So it's like we have to know that we want those shortcuts, but that they don't exist. But what I can tell you is if you put in the work and expand your capacity to understand, the answers actually do become so much more simple. And the questions then start to be intuitive. But they're intuitive based on studying. They're intuitive based on mastery. They're intuitive based on information. And then you meet people and then you can ask certain questions and listen for certain things and hear the tonality and hear certain words that most people are not picking up on. The majority of masterful coaching is invisible. It's invisible. You'll never see it in a demo. If you see a masterful coach help a client, almost all of their mastery is invisible to you because they're listening and they're assessing and they're observing and they're thinking and they're filtering and they're adjusting in here and they're deciding not going to say that now, but I wonder if we can get this to come out. The majority of mastery is invisible and almost everybody is asking visible questions. What can I do? What can I say? What can I hear? And then how do I react? Mastery is not reactionary. I mean, it is in the sense that you're responding to what other people are doing, but it's not reactionary in a rote memory kind of way where this happens and you do this. But almost everybody's looking at it that way. That's the worst way that you can look at it. All right. I can go on and on and on. I'm going to stop with that piece for now, just to kind of tie a bow on the question. When you hear somebody with approval issues, I want you to assess, are they wanting it? Are they liking it, or are they needing it? And if they're needing it, then we got a deep dive. Where's the experience that they're still holding on to? Who do they want approval from? Why do they want that approval? If they get that approval, then what are they going to do with it? Are they actually going to take action? A lot of people want approval from certain areas or certain people, and even when they get it, they still don't take action. So they just get caught in this loop of vague, approval seeking, but actually nothing truly shifts, right? So it's really about dissecting. Once you assess, go down deep, and then let's see what comes out of the human when you start asking questions about when and where and why and what if and when was the last time and what happened. All of that stuff is what's critical. Now, as it relates to coaching with approval issues, see, the way the question was asked is coaching clients with approval issues. But where I want to go is people who are coaching with approval issues. The coaches have the approval issues. I said earlier, I've been saying this whole time, we all have them. I think the bigger issue in coaching as it relates to approval issues is when the coach needs approval. When the coach needs approval from the client or from the teacher or from somebody else, or from that internal judging mechanism that we all have, that internal punisher, when the coach is coaching to get approval, that coach should stop coaching, at least for approval. Now, we're all humans on this journey, so I'm not saying if you need approval that you should stop your training and you should stop your practicing, but you've got to understand, if you are coaching other people for your approval needs, you're potentially damaging them. And you're potentially damaging yourself because you're not in this relationship clean. You're not really in this relationship to help them. You're in this relationship to get them to help you. And that's not clean. And I think, because of all the stuff that I've already talked about and a lot of other conversations that many of you have heard me have, I think most coaches are actually trying to feel better about themselves with the breakthroughs that they're trying to help their clients get. Like, coaches want the testimonial so they feel good about themselves. I was there. I was there once upon a time. And the other thing that coaches try to get their self-esteem through is money. And the more money somebody will pay you, this is the thinking, never ever has it happened, in my opinion, or anybody I've ever talked to. But we think the more money somebody pays me, the more valuable I am, because money's equated with value, right? So it's associated with value. So if I can get high ticket offers, then I'll feel better about myself. No, but I don't think anybody realizes that that's actually what they're searching for, right? Like, most people don't go into relationships thinking that they're actually trying to heal childhood wounds, right? But they are. Most of us are doing everything we can almost all the time to make ourselves comfortable and to heal wounds or to avoid pain, or like, that's the human experience, right? So we're all doing it. So most of us are not trying to learn how to get high tickets or how to get a lot of clients or how to become a full-time, well-paid coach or to make six figures or multiple six figures or any of those things. Most of us don't realize that we're trying to achieve all those statuses, all the vanity finish lines, so that we'll feel better about ourselves. Most of us don't realize that. Most of us don't realize that's what we're trying to do all over the place. But most of us have, I think, experienced, you have a goal, you get the goal, and it doesn't make you feel as good as you thought it was going to make you feel. That's a sign that you were in it for the self-esteem, but you tried to get self-esteem from a place that can't provide it. And money can never provide self-esteem. money and status and somebody paying you $5,000, $10,000, $50,000 will never close the gap between you and the 200-foot away elephant. Because money is not what created the distance. So money won't close the distance. Self-esteem has nothing to do with most of the things that we're searching for in order to feel better about ourselves. Status is not going to solve our self-esteem issues. But what I think most coaches are trying to do is heal their wounds with other people's wallets. Most coaches are trying to feel better about themselves by getting other people's money. And I'm just telling you this from all the experiences I have in this industry. The next time that works will be the first time ever, and I promise you it won't. I promise you that will never work. But most coaches don't realize that's actually what they're searching for. And because of that, they're searching for the quick fixes. They're searching for the easy ways. They're searching for the shortcuts in order to get to the thing that they think will make them feel good. But that actually makes it worse. For people that are in this in an unhealthy way, the way I've just explained it, what happens is the temptation is stronger to get to those finish lines, to get those wins. The temptation is stronger. But then the temptation becomes a desperation. And when you're in that desperation mode, you can't become a masterful coach because you're not in it right. You're not in it for the right reasons. So if you are misaligned, every step you take on the misaligned path cannot work because you're misaligned from the jump. You've got to be aligned, and part of that alignment is your own issues, your own self-esteem. So these are my philosophies. This is what we believe in as a company, which is why all the certification programs that we have is based on high-level coaching concepts, not just memorizing things. We have an online program called BCC, and it's got a framework that could help, even with this specific question, a framework that could help. It's called the Ignite framework. And you can take that Ignite framework and apply it to every single coaching conversation that you're in and help you uncover these approval issues or uncover belief problems or uncover all the stuff that needs to be uncovered. We've got a 5-day deep dive that's coming up soon, April 24th through the 28th. And it even goes just deeper into all of this. And it will expand your immersion mastery. And then we've got another program that helps you over the course of a whole year really become the essence of all this stuff, right? I'm not going to try to explain to you all these programs right now, but if you're not in a program that is designed for mastery, you'll never hit it. The program must be designed in a way that's paving a path for you to become masterful, not just for you to get a false sense of security and for you to think you know what you're doing or for you to memorize certain things. You're going to go out and you're going to fail, and it's going to be really, really traumatic. I don't know how many people, there's no way to quantify this, but I guarantee you there are so many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who've wanted to become a coach, thought they were ready because they followed the quick fixes, and then they went out there and they failed and they fell hard, and it was too much to ever overcome for them, emotionally, financially, energetically. If you want to be a deep dive coach, you've got to be prepared for deep dive work. And so if you want to see the depths of the ocean, you can't do that with snorkel gear. You need to put in the work to scuba dive. Now, I don't know much about this whole world, like what it actually takes, but I do know that you can just buy a snorkel set off the shelf and go to the water and snorkel now. There's no training needed for that. Just don't go below the tube. But you can't do that scuba diving. You need to understand what's going on. You need to be trained. You need all kinds of things in order for you to go down to the depths.
Now, if you like this video, check out that video right there. We're going to dive into 4 separate techniques to increase your impact as a coach, which will increase your success in your coaching business.
Again, it's a self-soothing mechanism, I think, for us to take responsibility away, because we don't want to think that there actually are people who have money. We're just not doing what it takes to go get them.